Hello. Hear me well? How many of you own a spacecraft or have access to one? Not many. So, leaving this planet to deal with problems of global warming and climate change is not an option, is it? Global warming is real. We all know that our planet is heated by sun, but not the direct rays, the indirect rays that are trapped by the gases in the atmosphere. Those are known as greenhouse gases. These are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and water vapor. There are natural sources of greenhouse gases, such as land and water vapor from the land and water, forests, as well as wetlands. Human-made sources of greenhouse gases are car, power plants, agriculture, and we also have to include rice paddies and refrigerants. When we are hot, we actually use more refrigerants. So it's really important to understand the influence of these greenhouse gases in global warming. Now, 200 years back, we figured these things out. The ancient history of science of global warming was done by Joseph Fourier, who experimentally demonstrated that atmosphere traps heat. 1827. In 1859, nearly 150 years back, Tyndall demonstrated that our carbon dioxide as well as water vapor traps heat. You might wonder, why would you care? You care, you have to care, because global warming leading to climate change is going to lead to extreme weather events. Those events are heat wave. Those events include tsunamis. Those events include hurricanes. Those events include torrential rains and sea level rise and droughts. They matter. As the warmer temperature we will have more intense and stronger hurricanes. So we have to have a plan in place. And we know this from empirical data that are measured in the field. Look at the graphs for carbon dioxide. It is showing increase in trends. Look at the graph next to it for temperature. Temperature is rising. Excess temperature in the global world are being absorbed by the ocean, leading to sea level rise. If I tell you these graphs are for stock markets, would you invest? I bet you would. But if I tell you these are climate change related graphs, you may pause. But let's take a moment and apply the same logic that you would apply to stock market to these graphs. Let's invest in our future to have a plan to prepare for global warming, climate change, and related extreme weather events. World Bank actually released a report in 2013 that estimated flood-related loss to be $52 billion a year. And then they added, if you throw in sea level rise, that would be about $1 trillion by 2050. That's a lot of money. This same report also identified 10 cities that are most vulnerable to flooding and sea level rise. Guangzhou is number 1 and Tampa is number 7. That's where I am from. I am from Tampa Bay region. There are several counties that make up the region. I am from Pinellas County, that is 6th in risk nationally. So this is my backyard. The problem of global warming and climate change is in backyard. I am in Florida, beautiful sunny beaches. I love my way of life. Vacationers spend a lot of money there to enjoy my way of life. But my way of life does not come without risk. I have risk of sea level rise. Look at the graph. Sea level is rising. It's going up. Again, if it was a stock market, you would not doubt that it's going down or staying same. So I need a plan to protect my way of life, my family's way of life, and our assets. This problem is in my backyard. I have to live with it. Now, many of you have seen roads blocked or clogged with water after torrential rain. It happens with us too. But look at the images on the left side. Those water on the streets are not from the rain. They are from the tides. Those are sunny day flooding. We also call them nuisance flooding. Those are results of sea level rise. As sea level rises, water has nowhere to go. It leads to inland and coastal flooding. And this flooded water inundates our roads in a sunny day, not even with rain. Now with rain it gets worse because water will not have anywhere to go. So we need to be preparing for it. We need to have a plan to adapt and to be resilient. The problem of Pinellas County is not alone. It happens around the world. It happens over here. You recently experienced hottest day of the summer in a recorded history. You have also experienced torrential rain. Look at the map on the right. Those pink areas indicate 30 degrees Celsius. I am not making this up. These are actually measured data, sometimes in the field and sometimes from the satellite. So if you look at the next map, you will see that extreme weather events, heat waves. Look at what is happening over China. It's not the problem of my parts of the world. It's a global problem. Look at the graph next to it. It shows number of hot days. Now, this is not your imagination when you feel hot. The hotter days are indeed getting more severe. We are experiencing more numbers of hot days relative to older times. So it's really important to understand what is happening. So we have seen the disaster in the United States. Last year alone, we experienced 3 major hurricanes: Maria, Harvey, and Irma. Also, look at the damages in dollar values. They are already exceeding what was predicted by World Bank for 2050. We need to have a plan. And I do want you to notice that the damages are estimated in terms of infrastructural cost and economic damage, and sometimes they are noted in terms of death toll. For Irma, I actually had to evacuate my house, my state. I had to go somewhere else. When I got back, there was no air conditioning. 12 people died, elderly people died out of heat congestion and heat waves. Well, in the richest nation of the world, this is not an isolated instance. It is going to continue to happen throughout the world. So we need to prepare. It's really important that we prepare. So the global warming and climate change will impact everyone, but everyone will not be impacted the same way. Elderly will not be impacted the same way as young. Rich will not be impacted the same way as poor. So let's try to understand the context of vulnerability. Let's first try to understand biophysical vulnerability, and then we will talk about socioeconomic vulnerability. Without understanding this vulnerability, we cannot plan, we cannot prepare, and we cannot be resilient and adapt. So, what is a biophysical vulnerability? It is the vulnerability of a place. By location of the place, it has inherent susceptibility to natural disaster. For example, Shanghai will experience sea level rise. Florida will experience hurricane, and California will experience earthquake. An island, middle of nowhere, can have biophysical vulnerability of hurricane, of tsunamis, or earthquake. But it will not have socioeconomic vulnerability because no one is living there. So socioeconomic vulnerability has to do with people. A same geographic space can be occupied by different people. They will have same biophysical vulnerability, but their socioeconomic vulnerability will be different. They will not be able to adapt and be resilient the same way. This particular community in Florida is a community of biplane home owner. These houses, instead of having garages, have hangars for their planes. So if the hurricane were to come, they can fly away. So their ability to prepare, adapt, and be resilient is completely different than the people who live in the poor neighborhoods. The people who has no cars, the people who does not have air conditioner, and perhaps needs a tree for shade. And that very tree during hurricane destroys their property. So we need to have a plan, because a market-based economy requires people with purchase power as well as cheap labor. These people with minimum wage earners, they work in that tourism industry, that service industry that supports the region. So for that region to bounce back, to recover, we cannot marginalize these low-income communities. We must have a plan. So it's really important to have a plan. But we know the science. I already mentioned some of these results were demonstrated 200 years back. But science, ideally, should be translated into policy really easy. But reality is not easy. There are issues that you need to take into considerations. For example, economic feasibility, technological feasibility, public awareness as well as knowledge, and decision making. Some decisions you can make as an individual or as a family. Other decisions you cannot make. That has to happen at the upper level, at the governmental level. So those decisions have different levels of resource access and information need. So decision ultimately gets done, but it's a far more complex process. And that's what we need to take into consideration. Cautionary note, the hurricane is not going to go down. Its severity, frequency, and intensity is going to go up because warm water provides energy to hurricanes. So intensity and frequency of hurricanes and typhoons are going to go up. The rainfall patterns are going to change, which will impact economy, including agricultural patterns of a region. Water will rise. We will experience higher and severe storm surge and storm events. But damages will be there. But take a look at the boy. He is standing alone amongst destruction. As of today, we measure damage of a disaster in the context of dollar values, infrastructural loss, or economy. Sometimes we take into consideration death toll. But what happens to the kid who lost their parents, who lost their family, who lost their friends? Humans need economy, human needs invention, but human needs human connection. That social structure, that social fabric can be destroyed due to disaster. Studies have shown poorer community can only be resilient when they have stronger social network. But when the social structures are gone, and we don't even compute that in our damage assessment, is this enough? Or should we rethink how we estimate damage and how we can improve the damage assessment that includes social structure, social fabric, not only the infrastructure, not only the economic loss, human connectionness, because after all, we are humans. This is the most important thing to us. So what you may ask, what can we do? Number one, believe in science. It's really important. Science is a tool that helps us make our life better. Invent ways to minimize and mitigate and reduce greenhouse gases, including carbon dioxide. Think about efficiency and development of resiliency and adaptation strategies that are inclusive, that helps everyone. Because if you make decisions for individual at a local level, addressing local values, local needs, local belief systems, we might be able to create a system that can be built up to nested system to solve this daunting global problem that looks so daunting at global scale, maybe more manageable at local scale. And most importantly, think about the human dimension of climate change and global warming. Think about you and the future generation. Think about what is the end game. Because this end game really matters. Because water will rise. Storm will get severe. We will need help. We need to help each other. We need to help the community. And we also need to help making better decisions, better policies. Because resilience and adaptation has a human dimension in an individual level as well as in a policy level. Individual level is when you prepare for a hurricane by buying supplies. That's an individual decision. When government levies tax to upgrade infrastructure, that is a policy decision. They all have to work in concert for us to have a better future. An individual decision example will be to buy an electric car to reduce your carbon footprint or choose a vegetarian diet. A policy decision would be to stop building the shorelines, let them be natural. So those are governance decisions and policy decisions we need to understand. Water will come and we will need help. Let's not get extinct with dinosaurs, because that is no fun. With all this technology and access to human ingenuity, we should be able to survive. We should be able to say hello to the future. If we can invest in the future, that's so that we can hand it to the future generation with glory and dignity and respect for future with all its humanity. Thank you.